In this lesson, we'll be talking about how to add a sixth to a chord or to a triad, and then we'll also talk about adding a ninth to a chord. First, let's talk about a sixth chord. So when you're learning songs from chord charts and things like that, you might come across a chord symbol that looks something like E6. So what does that mean? Well, the E we've talked about signifies the root, and when you see a chord symbol itself, just that letter E, that signifies a major chord. After that, we have the suffix, the 6. So what does that 6 mean? Well, that just means we're adding a note one major sixth interval away from the root note, the E. So I like to think about it as basically just raising the fifth by 2 frets, or even adding a note in that is 2 frets higher than a fifth. So you can have a fifth inside the chord, and you can have a sixth inside the chord. So it's adding a fourth note to our triad, now making it a 4-note chord instead of just a triad. Let's take a look at the chord I just mentioned, E6, and talk about how to get that 6th note. So we've got our E chord open. Now, again, let's talk about the makeup of the chord there. We've got root, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th, and root. So the easiest way to get a 6th is by taking that 2nd string 5th note there, that B, and making it 2 frets higher, a whole step higher to get a C sharp. And that looks like this. So there is our E6. Now, if we just wanted to take the top 4 strings of that chord to give ourselves a movable shape, we could use that as a movable chord. Again, great way to find any chord you're looking for, any root note. So let's just move this up 1 fret and take an F6 chord. So from E, 2nd fret, 1st, open, open. We're going to move everything up 1 fret to get an F major chord. And now let's add the 6th in there. That is, again, 2 frets higher than our 5th. Our 5th was on the 2nd string. Another thing to note is we have root, 3, 5, root. If we move that 5th up little by little, we do an augmented, and then a 6th. You might even see that in the context of a song. And that just adds some chromaticism to a chord progression. So there we go. That's how that 5th is raising just a half step at a time, and how we can end up on a 6th chord. Let's take a look at D major now. Open D chord. So let's take a look at another way to get a 6th chord sound, this time using a D major chord. Now, one way we could do this is to, again, raise the 5th by 2 frets. This is okay for a D major chord here in the open position. But if I wanted to use that shape and move that up the neck, say for an F chord, for example, that doesn't make a very easy shape to get to, right? It kind of creates a stretch. It's doable, but probably not something you could grab really quickly. So, let's talk about a different way to get the 6th then. Notice we have root, 5, root, 3. If we back the root down 3 frets, we can get a 6 if that's available in our chord shape. In our D, that's going to be available. So let's back that root down. 3 frets. Then we have root, 5, 6, 3. What's also nice about this strategy is that we have root, 3, 5, 6. Root, 3, 5, 6. So it kind of becomes more of a true D6 chord because we have the 5th and the 6th in there simultaneously. Let's move that to an F chord since we just looked at F. We can go F here, and we had that shape. Our D shape moved up. Let's move that root on the 2nd string 3 frets back, and we have that sound. Root 5, 6, 3. Now we have a movable shape too. Pretty easy to grab as well. So that's kind of nice. We could do a G6. We could do an A6. We could do a B6, B flat 6. So there is a 6th chord you can grab. Alright, so there are some 6th chord options for you. Now let's talk about add 9 chords. So the way an add 9 chord works is we have a major triad again, but now we're going to add a note that is the interval of a 9th away from the root. So this typically implies that there is a 3rd involved. So it's a little bit different than the sus2 chords we looked at. And it also implies that the 2 note, the 2nd scale degree or the 9th scale degree, is 1 octave and a 2nd away from the root. So let's take a look at what that means and how to figure this all out. So let's take a G major triad. We're going to use the E shape, 4th string, 3rd string, 2nd string, 1st string. So we have root, 3rd, 5th, root. So we need a note a 9th away from the root in our scale. G major scale. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's our 9. So an easy way to get our G add 9 chord would be to take this 4-note triad shape, again kind of an E chord shape moved up, and then we're adding our pinky to the 1st string to get an add 9. So this is G add 9. This is often closely related to the way Hendrix played his chords here, so he would often do like his thumb around the bottom, play things like that. He would do that sometimes for his 6th chord too. So if we're doing a G6, you can get your bass note on the low E string. Again, we've talked about root notes on the low E string, so that might be an easy way to find either one of these chords. Let's take a C add 9 for example. Root note here, regular C chord, and now C add 9 or C6. So that's a way you could think about it, using your 6th string as the root still. That might be a helpful way to see those shapes. Okay, so we talked about major 6th, we've talked about major chords with an add 9. You can do the same thing here with a minor triad. Let's take B minor here. Again, I'll use the top 4 strings as my triad bass. The 9 doesn't really change in a minor chord. It's still just that 9th away from the root. So there's that sound. So we have root, flat 3rd, 5th. Root becomes 9. So again, in these add 9s, why are we calling it add 9? Because we are adding a 9th to the triad. We're not substituting, we're not suspending the 3rd out anymore. We're keeping the 3rd in. We're adding the 9th 1 octave higher than the root. So there has to be that octave interval first, and then we get the 9. We can do the same thing with a minor 6 chord. So minor chord again, and we have the 6th interval. Again, it's a major 6th away from the root. We can do that, say, on an A minor shape here. That sixth interval, again, 2 frets higher than the fifth. So there's how we can get a minor sixth chord. E minor, root, fifth, root, minor third, fifth, and root. Adding the sixth, again, sixth interval away from the root. This time, it doesn't matter if it's more than an octave away from the root. It just has to be the sixth in there. Again, 1 whole step higher than the fifth. Let's take a D minor chord. Let's make that a D minor 6. So we talked about the strategy for this one was lowering the root 3 frets. And there we have that chord shape. Again, that's a good movable chord shape. So F minor 6. So if you're looking for some quick things to grab while you're reading a chart, those are some quick shapes you can grab. Let's have one quick extra look at another really cool chord you can use that is considered an add 9 chord. It's really just 2 stacked fifths. So this would be something similar to what Andy Summer would use in The Police. So how does this work? We've talked about our power chords and our perfect fifths earlier on in this series. Let's do a power chord on F sharp. So that's our 2nd fret of the low E string. Now, if we have a power chord and then an octave, root, fifth, and then root, still just a power chord, but that's a fifth here on the bottom. If we stack another fifth on top of that power chord, there is an add 9 chord, similar to what Andy Summers would use in The Police. It also sounds a little bit like maybe something Dave Matthews would use. So stacked fifth chords as an add 9 chord. That's kind of a neat idea. If you wanted to, you could actually add a third in there and get this add 9 chord. So like B flat, add 9. And it creates a nice sound with the 9 and then the third right above it. Again, that's power chord, another stacked fifth. Root, fifth, 9, third. We can make those minor too and get a minor sound out of these. So, stacked fifth, bar across for your minor sound. So now we're creating some more colorful chord sounds, but we're just using concepts we've learned earlier on in this series. So hopefully it simplifies it for you. We're getting cooler sounds, we're getting more unique sounds, but it's still kind of simple. Let's talk about how we can do that same shape with the root on the 5th string now. So it's still the same thing. Stacked fifths. I'm on 5th fret of the A string. It's a D note, so I'm going to do a D, add 9 chord. Those stacked fifths. Now, if we wanted to, we could still add the third in. So there's a D major, or a D add 9, and a D minor add 9. So again, some nice clustery sounds. There's that rub in there. Gives us some dissonance. Creates some unique color. All right, so there's how we can add some extensions. We've talked about 6s in chords, either adding them to a major chord or to a minor chord, and we've talked about how to create an add 9 chord. As we move on, we'll talk about how to create 7th chords.